All right, welcome to Your Time, Your Money, the show where your time is just as valuable as your money, and we know that. Excited today. We have a guest speaker for our segment today. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, Mark. What's going on? Hey, Candy. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, we've got an exciting topic. We're going to get into it fairly fast here because, it can be a little lengthy of a topic, I find, but it is a topic that we get asked a lot about, and that's Medicare. The ins and outs of it, and even just something as simple as when do I apply and when's the time frame, and
what's best for me,
Yeah, and there's I think a lot of confusion about what's covered and what's not covered. So let's get into that a little bit. We'll jump into it, but first I want to introduce our guest speaker, CANDY MARRERO. She's been in the healthcare industry, selling with health insurance and stuff for over 30 years, Medicare for about 2 decades now. So if there's one person that we can rely on that's very knowledgeable in that field, it's, as always, a partner that we have that has a lot of years of experience and probably has seen everything known to man within the Medicare world. She's with Capital Region Medicare Specialists. We're going to get some contact information out at the end of the episode, obviously, where you can contact her. But welcome, Candy.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes, Medicare is this thing that a lot of times gets confused with Medicaid. Right?
Yes.
Because they both sound right.
Yes, one is about money and one is about age.
Yeah.
So the Medicaid that people confuse, that's all about money and how much income someone has. Medicare is usually when somebody turns 65.
Yeah, right. And they're confused, like, what's paying out and who and when, and like, isn't there a 5-year look back? I'm like, no, that's the other thing.
Care, not aid, right?
Yeah. Exactly. So, right. I guess the easiest way for our listeners to understand is that Medicare, think of it like health insurance, right? What are you going to do for health insurance when you retire? Is the way most people view it in a general sense.
Right.
And we had the pleasure of you coming in, in a group session to our office and talking about the new rules and regulations and what to look at within the Medicare program. And we thought it would be very valuable for our listeners to hear about that. I'll transition into a little bit, but just tell us a little bit more about your background. I mean, you were doing, you do health insurance sales, you do Medicare sales the last 20 years. How has that industry changed a lot, over that time frame?
Yep. So I've been doing it a long, long time, and it has changed unbelievably over these years. So, I work with businesses to educate the businesses as well as the employees on health insurance because nobody understands health insurance, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about it before we started the episode, and I was like asking, well, what if you're a 1099? What if you're a W-2? How do I offer it, right? There's 1,000 questions there, right?
Absolutely, and everybody's confused. So I try to make it very simple and, educational, basically, for, group insurance. So we're educating employers and employees on the benefits that the employer's offering. And basically, what happens when you have longevity with employers is eventually people start getting older, imagine that, right? And when somebody turns, exactly, you've been working with a group for 20 years and now Joe turns 65 and you're like, oh, sorry, Joe, I can't help you, right? So Medicare was an evolution part of my business, a necessary part because people are aging. And so I've been doing insurance a lot longer than I've been doing Medicare, about, 20 years for Medicare. So it's just one of those things that's just really confusing. And these days it's about a 50-50 part of my business. So 50% is group, 50% is Medicare. The Medicare people really need the help. And so I'm always out there trying to educate because calling 1-800-MEDICARE is not fun for anyone.
Oh, my God. Well, I mean, let's just back up on that right there. I mean, there's a ton of Medicare scams. There's a ton of Medicare things that happen via email, via text, via phone call, right? Call now, get your free Medicare, assignment, right? And then people are calling, and then they're $10,000 in, and they don't know what happened.
Right, and they're so confused, and they get so much information that they don't understand and they don't need.
Even if, I'll just really global scope, like for someone that like you have a business, you work with a person, but if there's just a generic, the best way to start, right? If I'm getting close to 65, obviously we want to talk to Candy. Mm-hmm. But if I don't have that resource, what's the next closest best thing? Is there like a .gov or a .org?
Oh yeah, .gov.
.gov,
Medicare,
right?
Yeah, Medicare. .gov. But again, all of that is so difficult.
It's overwhelming, I bet.
It is. And imagine, we're talking about the aging population of people. So
they're not so good on these, right?
Right. and now we're expecting them to understand something. Medicare will send them out a book that's that thick that says, and it's about 2 inches.
Good luck reading it.
Yeah, exactly. And Some people do. They'll call me and they'll go, well, Candy, I read the Medicare and You book. I'm like, what? You read
800
it?
pages?
Yeah. And
3-page quiz at the end.
geez.
Did you burn 8 highlighters on the way through,
Oh my
man?
God.
Like,
And then they
holy
go, I'm
smokes.
so confused. I'm like, yeah, you should be, because every page contradicts the one before. That's just the way it is.
Right.
It's all correct information, but who the heck can understand
And that's
it?
why we insist work with a specialist.
Right.
Well, I
You
mean,
know,
we talked about it before the episode, right? Like, there's stuff we know, and there's stuff we don't know. And the stuff we don't know, we just outsource to people we trust.
Stay in your lane.
Right? Stay in your lane. I know what I'm good at. Let me do what I'm good at.
That's right.
Right? It's keep it simple.
Yeah.
But,
so, well, delving
yeah.
into it, let's identify just some of the basic concepts of Medicare. For us, a lot of people's retirement ages that they give us of when they want to retire they always say about 65,
65, 62.
because it seems to be centered around the health care end of their retirement,
Yes.
right? And even though people don't realize sometimes that they can retire 3, 4, 5 years earlier and pay those 3 years with their assets
Out of pocket, right?
They tie it around this age of 65 because of Medicare.
Right.
So maybe give us the ins and outs of Medicare, when it's available, maybe when you have to file, cases where you maybe don't have to file right away, so that listeners can understand like this, because there is a time-sensitive time frame on filing, otherwise they're penalized, I believe.
That's right. So basically, if somebody's working, then it all falls down to the working number of people that are at the employer level. So if somebody is working for an employer and there's less than 20 employees, it becomes who becomes primary, who becomes secondary. And if you work for a small employer, then you have to have Part A and Part B regardless once you turn 65, and I'll explain what that means. If you work for a large employer, you don't have to have A and B until you actually retire. The Part A is free and Part B has a cost associated with it. So if you work for a large employer who's paying your insurance, I would tell people stay on your employer's insurance, because that would be the best thing.
Even if I'm over 65,
That's
I'm
right.
staying on my employer's
That's right.
insurance,
As long
because
as
they're a
you're
big
working.
company and they're paying for it.
They're paying for
Got
it. That's right. But if you, if they're not paying for it and they're 65, if the employer's not paying, then that's when it would be a better option for them to pay the Part B money and go on to a Medicare plan, because Medicare plans, many of them are free. So you do have the cost of that Part B, but you've got a free Medicare plan. And these days, most employers have high deductible plans, which people
Right.
hate, right?
They had $5,000
Right.
before they start picking up any charges.
Absolutely. And people hate that. So when they turn 65 and they get an option for a Medicare plan, they're all copays.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody that's what everybody wants. They just want to pay $20 and let the carrier pay the rest. So the first thing is to decide if you're going to stay on your employer's plan or not. And then the second thing is, if they're under 20 people, you probably want to go on a Medicare plan anyway, because you're still going to have to pay that money for the Part B. Okay. So now just a quick backup. I always call it the ABCDs of Medicare, right? So Part A and B is a government part of Medicare.
That's your true Medicare.
That's right. You have to go to your Social Security Administration and sign up, or sometimes they do send it to you. So government is never really consistent. So we get some people, imagine that.
Oh, really?
I know you don't believe it.
Stop it.
But some people get the information automatically and go, oh, I don't have to do anything. Here's my Part A and Part B card. And then for as many people that say that, I get 1,000 more people that say, I didn't get anything. Yeah.
Or they threw it away.
Right. They didn't know what it
It's in the
was.
bottom of their
I got this
garbage.
book and whatever. But they so you do your A and B through your Social Security Administration, and then what happens is, once you've determined if you want a Medicare plan, then there's sort of three options for Medicare. You can just have your A and B, but then you also have to purchase a D, which is for drug. Everybody has to have a Part D drug plan.
For D, yeah, okay.
Correct. And you always want to get that. So you have to, the Medicare or Social Security will tell you it's optional. It's not optional. It's not optional.
You're getting it.
Because if it's only optional, because they're not going to require you to get it. But if you don't get it when you're supposed to, then when you need it down the road, there's a big penalty. So it's not really optional. You're going to need it eventually. So Part A, B, and D, you can just have that through, mostly through Social Security, right?
Right.
And that brings you a plan in itself. Your second option is what they call a supplemental, Medicare supplemental. Now, people toss around the idea, or toss around the terms supplemental, like we talk about tissues, right? Kleenex tissues, older people like me, say, can I have a Kleenex? Well, a Kleenex is a brand, not a tissue, And same thing with supplementals. People will say, I have a Medicare supplement. Well, sometimes they don't. They just call it that. But there's a true Medicare supplement. And what the supplement is it supplements, it offsets the cost from the A and B. So there's deductibles and coinsurance on the A and B.
And slowing it down a little for our listeners, I think that's a key point for people to understand is a lot of times people think Medicare is going to cover it. Mm-hmm. But when they say Medicare is going to cover it, they're paying for Part B, and they're paying for Part D, where D's like anywhere $10 a month or up, depending on their income. But they're not realizing, I think, a lot of times that there's co-pays and there's additional payments and stuff.
It's a certain amount of days in a hospital, stuff happens.
So I mean, your Medicare Part B could be $169, $170 a month if you're in a lower income bracket. Or it could be $700 and some dollars a month per spouse, right?
You make a lot of money.
Yeah, you make a lot of money, and that's where our role comes in is to make sure that the money they're showing doesn't get added to that IRMA to keep that up. But then they got to figure out on top of that what is Medicare not covering? What are my co-pays?
And what are some of the pitfalls?
What's the supplemental paying? I mean, you could be talking thousands more in medical expenses than you're planning if you're thinking, which a lot of listeners are, that Medicare is your health plan.
Right. They're covering everything. Well, maybe not.
Medicare is the basis.
That's right.
Right.
So
that you're building off.
I'm a linear guy. I'm a linear thinker, right? So if I'm 64, I'm close to 65, I'm going to my Social Security office. I'm not employed. I retired, right? So I'm applying for Medicare, right? And they're gonna deduct money from my Social Security check to pay for that, and I'm gonna get A, B, and D. That's how I want to do it. And then C is my supplemental.
No.
Oh no, I said it
that
wrong.
Was
I'm
almost
confused
right.
already.
So
I was close.
Now you were close. So A and B and D is
so
just
I don't dabble.
It's okay. Yeah, right. A, B, and D is what you get. That's your plan by itself. Your supplemental is just a supplemental.
That's additional where I can buy from Candy.
That's right. You can purchase a supplemental which will offset the cost of those deductibles.
And those are through other companies that people might be familiar with. Blue Cross Blue Shield, CDPHP,
now,
Aetna.
Sidebar, if I retired from a state organization and I have health insurance in retirement, right? Does that help me? Do I need to buy a supplemental, or does that act like a backstop? Because I know a lot of clients.
Like if you're a state employee.
Yeah, if I retired at 55, I'm a state employee. I held health insurance through my job, and I carry it through retirement. I'm assuming that, and I know this, that you continue to carry it after 65. It just acts as a backup.
So it depends on the employer. So there are some employers who, have a true plan that just takes you through life, and it's the same as what you had when you worked.
Sure.
And then there's other employers who have a special, retirement kind of plan, and then that depends on what they're offering. But talking about state workers and federal workers, what I always like to plug in here
we go.
Is that there's something called NISHIP that you get if you are a state or a federal employee. And many, not every single agency, but the majority of them have something called NISHIP. And if you have NISHIP, the company, the carrier is actually paying for your Part B. So if your Part B is $165 and you have NISHIP, they're reimbursing you that $165. So I get a lot of people.
Nice.
I get a lot of people call me that see some advertisements on TV for some fluff. This plan comes with dental and vision and whatever, and they'll call and say, well, I have NISHIP, and they don't have any of that. So then I have to explain to them that you're getting paid for, you're getting reimbursed for your NISHIP, for your
That
Part
comes
B.
via check. They just
That's
get a check in the mail.
They do. And every quarter they get this $500 and whatever dollars, right? Oh. And they get used to that, and that's great. Well, they can get rid of that and take a plan that comes with all the fluff, but then they're going to have to pay their own Part B. So usually I tell people if they have NISHIP, keep the NISHIP. Yeah. So that's just, I think, a good plug. Yes.
Got it. Good question.
And then the third thing is, the third option is your Part C, which you alluded to.
I alluded to Part C.
So Part C is actually called a Medicare Advantage plan, and that's the fluff. So when you have a Medicare Advantage plan, which you purchase either through somebody like me or directly through a carrier, it comes with your it's a copay plan, so there's no deductibles.
Okay.
It comes with your Part D, so you don't have to pay for Part D. And then it comes with all of the additional things that we all want, like dental, vision, over the counter. It comes with a gym membership. It comes with,
that's pretty cool.
A whole bunch of stuff. So a lot of people like that. It's sold by region. So in our area, the big carriers would be, your CDPHP, your MVP,
Sure.
those. But if you're in Florida, they have their own, there or
But
wherever.
I think it's important for people to know, just like when you're working with an advisor, we're the expert in that area. We're going to give you the best information. Well, Candy, you're going to know that Part C plan the best, and you're going to know which one to guide someone to.
Well, and the perfect reason why
it's important.
it is, like my wife was in pharmaceuticals for years, and there's certain drugs that you have to take. You can't take the generic from. The formulary has to be the same consistency. And correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the different brands and companies have different providers in and out of network.
Absolutely.
They have different drugs on
Right.
or off
You
formulary.
can't go to one doctor. You might be able to go to
and
another.
that's why you want to work with a specialist that can look and I know your process is to what drugs are you on?
That's right.
What are you
Right.
taking, right?
What
So maybe talk a
doctors
little
do
bit
you
Do you
about
have
that.
insulin? Do you have a pump?
Things the listener should be giving a list to somebody like yourself to shop out that plan and why that's important to you and what you're looking at.
That's right. Well, the first thing that I do when I sit down with somebody is I ask them, do they work and where do they work, so we can figure out that how many people work there.
Big,
that's
small
20.
employer.
That's right.
Right.
So that's the first thing. The next thing is, if assuming they're going to take a Medicare plan, then we go over what the supplement is versus what the Medicare Advantage is, and we go over all the ins and outs of everything. And then as we go through it, the next thing I really want to know is a list of their medications and a
Right.
list of their providers, because as you said, each carrier will have their own list of things they cover. So we don't want to sign somebody up for a plan and then find out that their
Oops.
$800 a month drug is not covered.
It's $5 cheaper, but you got to change your doctor
That's
and your
right.
drug.
That's
Right.
right. That's right. We don't want that. No.
So that's the deep dive
Yeah.
that we need
That's
for
right.
someone that's getting close, that they need to say, okay, which one do I need? Which one's best suited?
Absolutely. And the good thing is about Medicare, unlike group health insurance where you're kind of stuck with it for the year, as
Right.
Medicare, there's, especially in a Medicare Advantage plan, there's certain times that you can opt out into another Medicare Advantage plan. There's something called a 5-star program, which a couple of our carriers in our area actually have a 5-star program. It's an accreditation that says that they are nationally accredited throughout the nation as one of the top carriers, Medicare
Wow.
carriers in the whole nation. So we have 2 carriers in our area that are actually 5-star. So besides the accreditation, it also means for the person when they sign up that they have another opportunity to change plans throughout the year. It gives them one extra time to change.
Oh, nice.
So just in
That's-
case something happens,
right.
they need something more comprehensive, or they don't need something as comprehensive, they can switch.
That's
And what
right.
does that look like for the average person that maybe needs to switch? There's timing during the year that they can or can't, correct?
Yep.
Like without that 5-star, like what time frame, so listeners know, are they limited to change their options?
So if you're in a supplemental plan, where it's offsetting the cost of your deductible and coinsurance kind of plan, you only can change that every year, every January.
So 1 month.
Every year.
But
Well,
1 month a year, that's your opportunity.
October 7th every year to December 7th is
Okay.
your open enrollment period.
Yep.
That's every year. So during that period is when you choose your plan for January. So should you have a supplemental plan, every January is your renewal. It's also your renewal for Medicare Advantage plan, but there are some other months during the year that you can change Medicare Advantage plans. For instance, you can change from January 1st to March 31st to any other Medicare Advantage plan, which is great,
Yeah.
right? And then if you have a 5-star,
Right,
you also
the
have
5-star plan, you have
another
another
time
chance.
that you can change. Once you get into September, however, it's open, or October 15th is open enrollment. Once you get past September, you can't really make any changes until January.
So there is a
January.
rhyme or reason why the advertisements pop on
Always
TV.
comes at the same time in year. It's like
Exactly.
right during football season.
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't want to watch this
So
advertisement. I'm
chances
trying to
are,
watch
if you're
football.
seeing the
And it's always Joe
advertisement, you can
Namath.
choose.
That's
It's
on
always
there.
Joe
So,
Namath.
yeah.
And Joe Namath every time. Broadway Joe, gotta love
That's
him.
it, absolutely.
Dude's still winning.
Yep, it's a good thing. But that's the way it works.
So,
there
I
is
mean,
opportunities to change.
Maybe for some listeners, some ballpark, just because numbers. I mean, I don't know. I've never known. I've never seen it before. What does it cost? What do these costs potentially run in at? Like,
Right.
if I'm going to do a part A, B, and D, or if I'm going to do the supplemental, like the part C, what does that normally cost somebody?
Yep. So A is free, and again, you have to have A, B, and D, no matter what you
No
have.
matter what you do.
So out of those 3 options, you still have to have all 3.
Got it.
You're going to pay your standard 165 or the IRMA they call it, which is if your income exceeds the
Yep.
the 85,000.
And I want to make sure we zoom out here on IRMA.
Yep.
We've talked about it before. I want Mark to have our listeners understand what IRMA is. I'm going to sidebar on you really quick.
Yeah, so and this is why it's important that you do your Medicare planning in combination with your retirement distribution strategy, because money coming out of your IRAs, money coming out that you have coming in from your pension, part of your Social Security payment, that all gets added to that IRMA table, and there's a table on the tax charts that it's like a slide rule. The higher you go, the more the premiums become, on Medicare B and D, and that's per spouse. But there are things in your investments that do not apply to that IRMA, like a Roth IRA. So, if you can structure your income where there's a possibility you can have twice as much income coming in, but be paying less than other people in your Medicare premium if the advisor has worked it right with your distribution strategy.
I want to salt that down, right? IRMA is going to dictate how much I pay for B and D, right? For parts B and D.
Correct.
Yep.
So the less income I have, the less I pay.
That's right.
But most retirees between the age of 60 and 80 have what?
Well, let's just add the caveat, right?
Caveat, add it.
Doesn't mean the less income you have, the less you pay. The less income that applies to the IRMA table,
okay, let's say better.
The better. You could theoretically have somebody making $1 million a year.
There we go.
But if it's coming from the correct sources,
now we got it.
They could be paying as if the person's only making 20 grand.
Ready? 2 scenarios, right? Scenario A. The person has these massive traditional IRAs or 401ks, and they have to take RMDs, required minimum distributions, plus security, plus Social Security, plus pension, and it's going to crush them on IRMA, right? They're going to have a huge number, and they're going to have to pay parts B and D at a lot higher rate. That's right. Compared to the same person that has money in Roth IRAs,
life insurance,
or life insurance retirement planning, and now that same dollar just doesn't get applied to IRMA, thus creating a lower cost.
That's correct.
Okay, just want to make sure, because now our listeners see it. We're on different sides of the table here.
Yeah, and
right?
But it's connected.
Advisor and Medicare, but we're all connected.
And that IRMA table goes from the $160 a month, $170 a month,
all the way up to like $800, right?
To like $800 and some a month per spouse.
So if I have 2 people in the household,
so that's from $3,000 up to what's that?
10,000.
Well, between 2 spouses,
16,000,
17,000 before your co-pays, your other stuff that's associated with.
So me and my spouse
plan
are paying $16,000 a year for 20 years, from 65 to 85. How much money did we just give away, Mark?
Yeah.
Right? We just gave away nearly $350,000.
That's right.
Yep.
Because we didn't plan correctly. So, again, listeners,
That's why retirement planning
the next time your advisor talks to you or somebody calls you and says, hey, put a second set of eyes on this, and you say, I'm all set.
Yeah.
You might want to rethink it.
That's right. That $350 could go into something that goes in your pocket.
$350,000 isn't anything to spit at here, okay?
Same thing. The next time your CPA tells you you're going to save $500 on your taxes, that may be money that's going to compound the problem of medical expenses down the road.
It's not to throw mud at anybody, on a CPA or anyone, but yes, the advisor is looking in the long game, and sometimes I feel like the CPAs look very short term to save money short term, which is fine, but that creates bigger ripples.
Yeah.
And it pushes and kicks the can down the road further, which creates other problems. Right. Yeah. So we got to have an equal stance on it, and that's why when we talk about this, Candy, we want people to have just a generic understanding of how many factors really affect this world that we're in. Right. So sorry, I didn't mean to sidebar.
No,
and,
that's good.
I know we're approaching the end of the segment, but as far as changing the plan as your health changes, I think is important for listeners to understand too, is that you're not locked into that one carrier or that one Advantage plan. So what are maybe some reasons why people want to shop, even if they're on Medicare right now, they might want to contact you and shop as their health is changing.
Yeah,
so answer. Wait, I asked the first question first. How much does it cost? Right?
He's still waiting for the cost. So
how much does it cost? We sidebar. How much does it cost? And then ask for Mark's.
So
one big check.
So the A and B, the A is free. The B, we talked about the IRMA. We talked about the 165. When you get to D, which is for your drug, it could go anywhere from say $30 a month to $90 a month if you have to buy it separately.
Okay.
If you have a supplemental, you would still pay for your Part D, plus you would pay for the cost of the supplemental, which could be anywhere from $200 to $400 a month.
Okay, so just ballpark. So what's that going to cost me?
Well, if you have a true supplemental, you're paying your 165 at least, or if you have IRMA, you're paying more.
Well, let's say 200.
Okay, so we'll say 200. Then you're going to pay. Let's say you take the middle of the road for Part D, so you're paying $50 a month for Part D.
250.
Then if it's $200 to $400, depending on what what supplement you want. So
Let's say it's $300.
Yep, so 3.
So $550 a month.
That's right.
That I
That's
can
for
expect. That's for me. What
Yep.
about my spouse? Same thing.
Same thing. Yep.
So that's $1,100 a month that
Yep.
me and my spouse are paying to make sure we're covered appropriately.
That's right. Or if you took a Medicare Advantage plan, which is the Part C, it comes with Part D, so you don't have to purchase Part D. You still had to pay your $165 or your IRMA, but when you get to the Medicare Advantage,
that's an all-in, kind of like a
that's
wrap.
for everything. That's right.
Okay.
And
And that's why people call you.
That's right. And
Got
if you
it.
took the Part C, the Medicare Advantage, it would come with the Part D, and I could give you a free Medicare Advantage plan. So that's why a lot.
So you went from 1,100 to 165.
Yep.
Okay.
Not
This
bad.
is why we call candy.
That's right.
Yep.
This is why I love candy. I mean, we call candy. I do love
Absolutely.
candy. I do love candy.
Oh yeah, we
It's
all
delicious.
do. But going back to what you were saying, what were you saying now? You say
So
that?
you had a great
You had a
question.
I was saying
I
You had a great
of-
question
of
about-
asking of just some specific reasons of why a listener would want to change.
Yes,
their-
why would
the-
they wanna
the
change?
Okay,
plans.
perfect. So typically when somebody picks a plan, I tell them to focus on what their situation is right now. Because, some people come in and go, oh, Candy, I'm aging and, I got to pick a plan because I'm going to be older. And I always say, listen, we're all aging. You're not going to be any older than anybody else in 12 months. It's going to be, one more year. Pick a plan that's based on what your needs are right now, and I tell them about when they can change.
Right.
But typically, you pick the plan, and you don't know what's going to happen to you. If next month,
Can't forecast the future.
that's
you
right.
know?
If next month something happens to you, you have to go to the chiropractor 3 times a week.
Right.
You might have said, "Oh my God, if I knew I was going to do that, I wouldn't have picked this plan."
I would have had a different plan
That's
that
right.
has more
So something like that,
comprehensiveness. Okay.
would be like, I want a lower copay because before you only went to the doctors 4 times a year. Now you're going to the doctors 4 times a week.
Well, I think it's similar to auto insurance.
It's true.
It's like you don't know what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as we talked a little bit before the episode, is that people, I don't want to say get complacent, but they don't change the plan.
Right.
Well, they don't
but
test it.
and
They don't test it.
Yeah, and they incur
right?
the cost, not knowing that, hey, I should have shopped out and I might not have to be paying this chiropractic fee because another plan for the same cost or maybe even more cheaper could be covering it.
Good to your point. I called my P&Z place and I'm like, hey, I think I'm going to go with a different place. And all of a sudden now they're scrambling. Oh, let me do this rate quote for you.
Yeah.
Let me find a better rate for you. And it's like,
They didn't want to give you a better rate.
why didn't I
2
get a
days
better rate
ago.
like a month ago?
Yeah.
Or a year ago?
Well, you
right?
know what's different about the car insurance versus the health versus the Medicare?
Well, obviously it's much different.
Well,
but
it
still
is.
testing the plan, I think, is the point.
Right. In terms, though, you can't buy the car insurance after the car accident, but you
Correct.
can
Yeah.
change your Medicare plan
After-
when you have something.
So like
happen to you.
I'm on plan X. I get diagnosed with disease XYZ. I need more comprehensive plan. I can change.
That's right.
But
In most cases,
if I smash my Ferrari into a wall at
Yeah.
full speed, I
Sorry.
can't go on my insurance
That's right.
after
That's
that.
right. Absolutely.
And
Replace
break
it.
my horse. Right?
Can we get a picture of the car? Well, I'll send you pictures of pieces.
I'll send you pictures yesterday.
That's
that I-
right.
Yes.
So
Well, thank you so much for coming in today. We appreciate it. Hopefully, our listeners gain some valuable information off of it. Why don't you share your best email contact information for the listeners?
So the best number to reach me is always going to be my cell. I provide a one-person point of contact, so it's not 1-800-Medicare. There's no automation. It's literally my cell number, which is area code 518-929-1506. That's always going to be, a great way to reach me. If you want to reach me by email, it's a little bit long, but it's Candy at Capital Region Medicare Specialist.
oh my God.
Call the cell.
Just call the cell.
Call the cell. That would be easier.
Call the cell.
And we have, of course, the website, Capital Region Medicare Specialist.com. So,
Okay.
Excellent. And we'll put that up on our episode too, so listeners have access to that as well. You can reach the Esley Group at 844-444-YTYM or at yourtimeyourmoney.net for your net worth. Like and subscribe and share, and keep sending in the requests for topics you'd like us to cover. As always, it's your time.
Your money.